Hi, this is Miss Webb. Because we're running out of time, I wanted to go over the things I thought was really important, and I want to make sure you know why we've been factoring, um, and how to solve quadratic equations. And so I'm going to skip around a little bit. I'm going to skip the first few sections in chapter 10 on graphing, and I want to go straight into how to solve it. And then we'll go back that last week and talk about graphing because you may not have time to do the assignment and turn it in. Okay, let me get my pen out. Let me take a sip of water. Okay, there are 4 different ways to solve quadratic equations. If you're confused on what a quadratic equation is, it's when we take anything that looks like that. It's a standard quadratic equation. That's what we've been factoring, those expressions. Okay, but notice I'm talking about quadratic equations. This is just an expression. We're going to set them equal to 0, and it makes an equation, and we're going to solve them. Now I'm going to go over graphing with you, and it kind of explains how we do that, but I'm going to do that last, which is not the way I would normally do it. That's where I'm going to do it. Today we're going to do finding the square roots and factoring. And then I have one other lesson. I'm going to go over the quadratic equation. You have to be able to do this in Algebra 2. We do it in geometry. Completing the square we'll do in geometry as well. So you'll get a chance to see it there. Okay, here we go. Okay, if you have no middle term, so remember we've been looking at expressions that look kind of like this. Okay, and if I have no middle term, that 3 isn't there. In a quadratic equation, and if it's an equation, it's got to have an equal sign, you can take the square root of both sides to solve. So here's an expression, I'm going to make it an equation. First step to solving is set it equal to 0. Okay, x squared minus 4 equals 0. I add 4 to both sides, I get x squared equals 4. I can now take the square root of both sides. If I take the square root of x squared, it's x. When I take the square root of 4, I get 2 answers. It's plus or minus 2. I have now solved the quadratic equation. So that's a pretty simple one. I'm not going to go over it in any depth. You'll have like a 4 or 5 that you want to try and use. And we're going to talk about how to do it with the by factoring. I'll just go to the next example. This will make a little more sense. Okay, so we've been talking about factoring these expressions. We do a lot of this in Algebra 1. In Algebra 2, we do a ton of it. Okay, well, the first step to solving a quadratic equation is to set it equal to 0. Okay, now, once I get to this point, I'm going to factor the side of it. Let's go see what I mean. Okay, I'm going to play the game. I need 2 numbers that multiply to 12 and whose difference is 4. Whose difference is 4? There we go. There's the difference that's 4. So I'm going to put a 2 and a 6 in here. This sign, negative, it goes with the biggest factor. There we go. Okay, now we know that anything times 0 is equal to 0. 4 times 0 is equal to 0. 5 times 0 is equal to 0. It's called the zero product rule. So either x plus 2 has got to equal 0, or x minus 6 is equal to 0. Can you solve this one? What's x plus 2 equals 0? I subtract 2 from both sides. Well, x must be a negative 2. Or x minus 6 equals 0. I add 6 to both sides. X must be equal to a positive 6. And I have 2 answers, this one and this one. If I pick x to be a negative 2, it'll make this 0. 0 times, I don't even care what this is, it will equal 0. If x is equal to 6, it makes this 0, and I don't even care what it is over here. So that's why we've been factoring, because we want to be able to solve quadratic equations. So when I come here and I said equal to 0, I say x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0, and now I'm going to factor it. I have two numbers that multiply to 12, and this time they have to add to 7. There they are, 3 and 4. This is a plus sign. Oh, so it's got to be a plus plus. Okay, now we're going to zip it. Well, what do you mean zip it? We're going to use the zero product rule. We're going to say x plus 3 has got to be equal 0, or x plus 4 has to equal 0, one or the other. We're going to zip it. We're going to use that zero product rule or product property. I'm going to say x has got to equal -3, or x has got to equal -4. And that's how I solve the quadratic. Okay, this one. Okay, well, I'm going to see if I can factor it. I'm going to set it equal to 0 because I want it to be an equation. Two numbers that multiply to 6 what is this going to tell me? Who sum to 5. Be these right there. And it's a plus plus. I'm going to zip it. And I'm going to say x plus 2 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. So x has got to equal -2, or x has got to equal -3. You know what? I think I'll put it back in the original equation and see if that works. This one right up here. Well, if I say x squared, let's go with that -3 there. -3, and remember when I evaluate, I put it in parentheses. 5 times -3 plus 6. Let's see what I get. Now, -3 times -3 gives me a +9. -15 plus 6 equals 0. Well, is it 15 plus -15 equal to 0? Yep, it works. It'll work if you put in a -2 as well. So you have effectively solved this quadratic equation. Let's look at another one. Okay, I'm going to set it equal to 0. I'm going to factor it. Two numbers that multiply to 6, whose difference is 1. It'll be that one. x2, x3. This is a negative sign. That goes with the biggest factor. Now I know x plus 2 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. And what do I have here? X has got to equal -2, or x has got to equal 3. Okay. Now let's try another one. Nope, that was the last one that I'm going to show you. But I really wanted you to, I hate for us to go over all those examples of factoring and you not see why we were doing it, because we want to be able to factor quadratics so that we can solve them. And a whole bunch of stuff you do in science is it's modeled after quadratic equations. Gravity is modeled after a quadratic equation. I throw my cat out the window, I can tell you when he lands on the ground. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to that this year. But good luck with your assignment.